at the end of the day, I think it was helpful for me to kind of work backwards, thinking about G4 and how to set them up well for success. And just realizing that the structures are going to look a little bit different for each generation, and that's okay.
That was Camille Johnson, family liaison at HF Capital. This episode also features part 2 of my conversation with Luke and Catherine Neumayr, 7th-generation ranchers at V8 Ranch, one of the world's largest Brahman cattle operations. But first, in this interview, we hear from Jamie Shah, G2 president of family-owned Chem-Impex and an adjunct faculty member at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. She's back on the pod to talk about her latest For What It's Worth column, which tackles what she calls hat switching, the different roles family members juggle when they're an owner, an executive, a board member, and a family member all at once, sometimes in the same conversation. Jamie explains why naming the hat you're wearing out loud can diffuse tension and why she sees wearing multiple hats as a strength rather than a liability. Hi, Jamie. Nice to see you again.
Hey,
Welcome
Zach.
back to the pod.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, you're back on, and that means, aside from the fact that I just always enjoy talking to you, that you have a new For What It's Worth column. And this edition is about hat switching in a family business, and I think any of our listeners will kind of understand what that means. But basically, it just means the multiple roles and identities that you have when you're a family member who might also be a shareholder, an executive, maybe an employee, maybe a board member, all those things wrapped into one. And, which one of those are you in any given moment, in any given conversation? And so just to kind of like set it up here, the question that you tackle in this column, it came from a 2nd-generation executive who also serves on the board of their family business. And they said that their peer executives in the C-suite who don't serve on the board treat them differently and sometimes try to get information out of them that a typical executive wouldn't know, but they're trying to pump them for information because it's like, oh, well, I know you were on the board, right? So one of the things that you advocate for in this column is naming the hat out loud and, saying like, this is the hat that I'm wearing in this conversation. And you also note that a lot of times these people that you're interacting with, they're not thinking about the hat that you're wearing, right?
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about like what you mean by naming the hat out loud, sort of what that looks like in practice?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much to the reader who posed this question because I thought it was a
Yeah,
really excellent one. And I do really think it highlights the tension that a lot of us in family business feel where we're often code switching and we don't always know which way to show up. And the tactic that I talk about is naming the hat, which often in like when people are talking about emotions, they say name it to tame it. And I
yeah,
think part of the challenge that we have when we're in these situations where people are asking us for our opinion and we have to be living in 2 worlds simultaneously is we actually don't even know which one of us they're asking. So I
yeah,
think asking for that clarity of like, okay, are you asking Jamie as the president of the company or Jamie as the sister? And sometimes it's not even external people. It could be other family members.
totally.
And I feel like maybe speaking that out loud to the people that are in the room or the person you're having that conversation with is helpful because it highlights like, well, which perspective do you want? And of course, maybe people want multiple perspectives, and then you can share them from different perspectives if it's appropriate.
Yeah,
But also just for yourself personally, even if you're naming it aloud in your head, gives you a sense of clarity. Because sometimes I'm in these situations and I don't even realize like, oh, they didn't actually ask Jamie as the daughter. They asked Jamie as, the leader, which is
yeah.
different.
Absolutely. No, I think that's really good advice. And the other thing that you mentioned I thought was interesting is like you advocate for assuming good intent on the part of the person that's asking, right?
Mm.
And I would imagine that the assumption as a family member sometimes is like someone's trying to take advantage of me and my position to try to extract information in some kind of like nefarious way. That's not always the case though, right? So like what else could cause somebody to sort of try to circumvent the formal channels to get information that they don't have from you as a family member?
Yeah. Like what other reasons you're asking?
What other reasons that aren't necessarily
Nefarious. Yeah.
nefarious or, yeah.
Yeah. I think it comes down to just trust. Like everybody
Yeah.
wants to know, am I in good hands? Like, should I be worried? Is my job on the line here? I think they're looking for a sense of being put at ease. They're looking for a sense of security. And I think all of those things are actually really innocent. They're not actually mean intentioned or ill willed at all. And it's really easy for us to kind of restate that in a way that is negative. But I do feel like sometimes in our role as a family member, even not as a business leader, is to just provide a sense of comfort to people.
Yeah.
You have to bear in mind, like, you don't want to give false information or false hope, but what
Yeah.
can we do to just kind of put people at ease? And I actually think family members who are not in the business are actually helpful at this as well, because they're not clouded by business judgment, and they can just provide a sense of understanding for a human at the human level, putting
Yeah.
aside all of the other business things. But yeah, I think it comes down to just creating um like a understanding of trust, and that's
Yeah.
not easy at all. I think that it's people are testing our trust all the time.
You also mentioned in the article that like when people are coming to you seeking information, sometimes it's a sign that there's an information gap that should be fixed by the company, right? Or there's a
Right.
transparency issue that maybe could be addressed. Like, hey, maybe we should be giving this
Right.
information to people so they're not in the dark, right? Yeah.
And us in
Um,
family businesses, we're often it's like we struggle with this idea of transparency as well. I know that I do in my family, where it's like you want to be open, you want to be transparent, but at the same time a lot of things in a lot of families are very closed door. They don't want to necessarily air their dirty laundry or share too much. So it is a fine line to balance, and it could mean that there are deficiencies in the organization because maybe we've overcorrected for, I don't want to say secrecy, but like making sure that all the ducks are in a row before we share anything. That perhaps there are ways to make people aware in different ways earlier.
yeah, absolutely. And then my last question, because I thought this was an interesting point too. You note that in a well-functioning family enterprise, having family members wear multiple hats is actually like a feature and it's not a bug. And so what's the positive aspect of having these sort of like multiple identities, I guess,
Yeah.
when you're in a family business?
Perhaps that's me being a true optimist, because at the end of the day, like, it's not like I can get rid of the fact that I'm a family member, or I mean, I could choose to leave the
Right.
business, but if you really do love what you're doing, it's not as easier said than done.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I really believe that, like, putting aside even the business and family person, you as an individual are multifaceted. Like, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, I'm a mother. Like, these are all things that all often work together and sometimes work against each other, and like that's just the reality of who we are as human beings. And what does that allow us to do? It allows us to come to the table with different perspectives, ideally more empathy. um, and I think being authentic about who you are allows you to lead in a way that is true to who you are. So I think it's, in my mind, none of it's going to go away, so I might as well embrace it as embrace it as a strength and not a weakness.
Absolutely. No, but I think that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, you do bring different aspects of yourself to all the different roles that you play. And I think that is a healthy thing. So, no,
Yeah.
that's excellent. Well, we don't want to give away the whole article, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah,
you
you
want people
gotta
to
check
read
it out.
it. Yeah.
And if anybody has another question, we're always taking new questions, and it's really interesting to see what's top of mind for people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. It's been really fun. So yeah, fire away with your questions. Check out the article. It's live on familybusinessmagazine.com right now. It's called the Mastering the Hat Trick, the Family Business Hat Trick. And it will also be in the July-August print issue, which should be arriving on your doorstep any day now. So Jamie, thank you as always for hopping on, and can't wait to chat about the next one.
My pleasure.
In this interview, we return to V8 Ranch with Luke and Catherine Neumayr, who discuss what sets their business apart from the version of ranching most people know from television, including Yellowstone. They also talk about raising their son Knox to be an 8th-generation rancher and why patience matters more than boldness in a business where a single decision takes years to prove itself right or wrong. And since I've been teasing this question a bunch now, we might as well jump right into it because, a lot of people watch Yellowstone or whatever else, and they have this misconception of what ranching is, that it's all cattle branding and, herding cattle and whatever else. It's a sophisticated global agricultural business. And so I would love to know, what does it actually take to run an operation of this scale? And maybe what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you all see about what modern ranch life is?
Well, we loved the show Yellowstone too, because when it came out, all of the livestock world was so excited that there was going to be a show that kind of represented our world, and
Yeah.
we do love Yellowstone. But I will say, you know, the world that is portrayed on Yellowstone is exciting drama and land disputes and politics, and the cattle on that ranch are more of a commodity product, which cattle in general is a commodity, and I get that. Um, but at our ranch, it's a completely different experience. First off, we don't utilize horses, so that's something very simple. Is we don't ride horses to work our cattle, but more than that, there's not nearly as much drama, and we have a train station we're taking people to or anything like that.
Right.
Days I wish we could,
But so
but
Yeah.
On Yellowstone, they're taking those cattle when they're loading up the cattle to move them to the market to, provide their product to someone and then get a check back. Our business is completely different because we are seed stock producers, which are people who raise cattle, sell them to other cattlemen. So breeding stock is what we have. And I think that the cattle that we sell, they're certainly not, a commodity. It's more of a branded product, a V8
Yeah.
men or V8 shorthorn. And more than it is people aren't buying from us based on a pound rate or anything like that. They're buying an experience and a service
Yeah.
um, a branded product. So like, people might say, well, I want to wear a Ralph Lauren shirt. There's people who believe they want to own a V8 Brahmin. And
Interesting.
and so that's because of that, compared to Yellowstone, our life is a lot more about our customers, about building relationships with people. Um, we have a product that we have to market. We have to actually
Yeah.
build the brand and talk to our customer base. And it's not as simple as what they do, which is loading cattle up and taking them to an auction barn. So it's completely different in that regard of just the way that we market our product. I think that
Yeah.
the management of the cattle certainly similar. Some of the problems that we
Yeah.
run into, predators that could hurt our cattle, problems with the weather, all of those things we deal with. But
Yeah.
the main difference is our product is more of a breeding product, a boutique product, even marketed to a specific client, and that's a big part of what we do is the marketing and the customer experience.
I think
Well, yeah, Luke was talking about getting the social media presence, focusing more on that. They don't spend a lot of time on that
Right.
on Yellowstone, from what I know. So, yeah.
and that's something that, not only do we raise breeding stock, but the cattle breed that we have the most of are Brahman cattle. And
Right.
they're somewhat geographically limited here in the United States because they thrive in tropical and subtropical climates, where there's heat and humidity. Where this Yankee does not do well, these cattle do great. So while
Yeah.
we are more of a southern breed here in the U.S., if you look at the globe, the world, anywhere along the equator, and a little bit north and a little bit south, you'll find Brahmin or Brahmin influenced cattle. We've sold cattle to 6 of the 7 continents. There's no cattle on Antarctica, so I think we could probably say we would never sell cattle there. But something, referencing it back to Yellowstone, we have to deal with global issues a whole lot more than what,
Yeah.
even normal, I don't want to say normal, but domestic cattle producers have to do. So if there's some sort of political uprising in Venezuela, that
Yeah.
their markets. If there's something that's happening in Asia or India or Australia, those are things that we really have to pay attention to because those are big markets for us. We export
Yeah.
a lot of cattle and semen to those areas. So we have to just kind of remain mindful of things that are going on all over the place. For example, Australia is on a very big push for polled cattle. Polled cattle are naturally hornless. So if we're talking about utilizing things like Facebook ads, we don't want to push a bull that we're trying to sell semen on in Australia that has horns because it's going to
Right.
deaf ears over there. Um,
Yeah.
and that's, it's really, really fun. And that's something back to this whole generational thing is there's a big chunk of the day when we are sitting in a computer on a phone, typing, texting, doing things like that. And Catherine's dad still to this day doesn't quite understand what we're doing. He thinks that we're like
Yeah.
boomers playing, balloons on the computer and doesn't understand like everything that goes into it because that is something that is new, I guess, for our generation compared to his.
Yeah.
Another really, really great thing about Yellowstone, and like Kat said, we love it. And aside from like the nuanced differences, the same way like if a doctor watches Grey's Anatomy and notices things that are different like that, we don't have to talk about those
Yeah.
things. But for us here at V8 Ranch, it has created an entirely new customer group for us. All of these people that love this Western lifestyle it's on TV. And we noticed Catherine and I both have V8 shirts on. We wear these all the time. These are like our work uniforms. We have a completely separate merchandise line of clothing and candles and stuff like that. And we've noticed that with the popularity of Yellowstone, that side of the business has completely taken off.
Yes.
I wanted to ask about this. You mentioned your little guy, your son, and Catherine. I'll start with you because I wanted to ask you about balancing motherhood and leadership. How do you balance these roles, the leadership role with the motherhood role, and then how do they kind of influence each other?
Well, just this past year, last school year, we switched and started homeschooling our son. So that's changed it again. So that's been different because now it's my ranch roles and my role as a mother and a wife, but now I'm also the teacher. Um,
Yeah.
but it works really well for us because at the core of everything as far as raising Knox, I'm trying. When he was little, I used to post pictures on Instagram. I'd always use the hashtag raising a rancher. Uh, and that is what we're trying to do is raise a rancher because, not only are we trying to prepare him for the future that will exist for him as he would be the fifth generation of our family to have this ranch. He'd be an eighth generation rancher. Um,
Right.
we have to also make the adjustments to the ranch so that it will exist for him. And,
Yeah.
I think I'm always aware of the fact that people always mention small businesses, that people start a business and then within 5 years, there's a high likelihood that business fails. I'm
Right.
very aware, though, that there's plenty of businesses that have existed for a very long time that still you'll see like they're closing their doors. I have to be very aware of the fact that you have to keep improving and adjusting. And so even though V8 has been going since 1944, I never feel like we are a safe business. I feel like we constantly have to make adjustments so that that business will exist and serve the next generations of our family. As far as balancing it all, I think if you were to ask me what's my number one is raising a rancher and trying to raise him to be the next generation. And the way that looks is very similar to the way my parents raised me, which is a lot of on the job training. We're constantly adding more education into his life in the ranching aspect. And so, we never miss an opportunity to point out something that we think he needs to know, whether it is the udder on that cow could be better, or this cow doesn't have a lot of doability, which is the ability to stay fat on not a lot of forage, the ability to basically be what's called an easy keeper.
Okay.
Um, but all of these things we're trying to teach him
Yeah.
because I want him to be able to feel empowered to step in that role far before the world says he's ready. I think
Yeah.
my dad was the son in a family business. He was poised to do what he's doing today, which is, run the family ranching business. I think he was maybe 15 or 16 years old when he started having really real responsibilities within that ranch.
Yeah.
So My son is 8, and I think to myself, like, at what point can we start handing actual responsibilities to him where he starts to feel ownership and feel like a valued part of the family business? And that's really important to me.
Yeah.
And, I think, like Catherine just said, we take him everywhere with us. There isn't a conversation that happens about the ranch that he's not a part of, if he wants to be. It's not like we have board meetings and he has to sit at a conference table and take notes.
Right.
Every evening we'll go take our trash across the ranch to the dumpster, and there's just conversations that happen. And I think what we're really hoping for him is that he's able to kind of slide into these roles a little easier than, my branding experience was when
Yeah.
someone just say, "Hey, Knox, you're doing this now." And he's like, "Whoa, WTF, dude. Like, I've never done we haven't talked about it." Like, ah,
Yeah.
we want to make sure that he is still able to enjoy his childhood and be a kid. Like, that is something that we don't want to not necessarily take away from him, but not, make sure that that's still a priority for him because he still is 8. He loves
Yeah.
playing games on an Xbox and goofing off.
Yeah.
I can look over in the living room across the computer from me, and there's a huge pile of Legos that is,
Yep.
we want to make sure that we're balancing that, but still just gradually introducing him to new things around the ranch, new people. It's never going to be like a shock for him to step up to whatever his future role will be here. Um,
Yeah.
he will be well aware of everything that's going on, and if he wants to hire somebody to brand the cattle, then that's his right, but he'll know how to brand them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that, balancing a business and parenthood and still keeping everything kind of in check that we just kind of have, our goals for what we hope when he's 65, what his life's going to look like. And we always try to move towards that.
Yeah. And it's a great attitude to have that, like, as you both know, in 20 years or whatever, the business is going to be much different than it is today. Every generation steps into a business that's way different than the previous generation, right? And so it just keeps evolving. 8 generations of cattle ranching. How does that long-term perspective influence the way that you approach growth, risk, and stewardship in the business?
Well, I think in the cattle business particularly, I don't think that we're as fearless in making changes because changes take a long time in the cattle world. So
Yeah.
the gestation length of a cow is 9 months, and then that calf would be probably 2 to 3 years from going into production themselves. So you're really looking at from deciding to try something new with your genetics. You won't know if it was a success or a failure until probably 4 years have gone by. And so
Yeah.
because of that, it's very scary to stick your neck out and make a significant change, especially in our world of cattle breeding. That being said, it's easy to make some changes within the family business, the way things are ran, that can improve things drastically. Uh,
Yeah.
the bottom line is that we have to make those changes that are necessary, no matter how painful they are, um, because that's the way we keep the business going for future
Yeah.
generations. And so, having the difficult conversations are so important, and they're scary, especially when family is involved because there's feelings involved. But I think for the longevity of a business, for our business, taking us, getting us to year 100, which would be 2044,
Yeah.
and beyond, we've got to have those conversations. We've got to make those changes both in terms of improving the cattle, continuing to push ourselves to create better cattle, having the honest conversations we need to have about our product, which are the cattle, but also having those difficult family conversations about what changes do we need to make, so that this family business can continue and continue to serve members of our family for generations. And I think that at its core is what's the most difficult for me, is to have those conversations with the people that you love, or
Yeah.
to push other people to have those conversations in your family. It's difficult. But I think when I think about being the 7th generation, my son being the 8th generation, I feel confident those conversations have been had for generations in our family, that someone at some point had the gumption to have the difficult conversations. And I'm so thankful for that. And so
Yeah.
that's why I feel like I, Luke and I will push ourselves to do that, because that's how we preserve this business so that years from now, it'll still be here serving generations of our family.
This quote that Catherine's dad says all the time, and it's dance with the one that brought you.
Yeah.
Not, I guess, in marketing terminology or whatever, he would be a late adopter. He is not an early. So as we are going through, and I don't want to say taking risks, but just trying something different, trying to change. And like Catherine said, we're 4 years out from knowing if that's going to work or not. But
Yeah.
can't, overnight just say, hey, we're going to change everything. Because
Right.
years from now, we might be saying, hey, guess what? We're going to have a dispersal, because what we did, we went all in on that and it did not work. So
Yeah.
more about taking, an educated or a calculated approach to things like that. And I think that's something that, we're able to share with Knox, with our son, and say like, hey, you know what? Change isn't scary, but just make sure you have your bases covered first. All right.
Yeah.
Don't stick your
Yeah.
neck out just to get it chopped off. Like, make sure you've got everything, and you can try something here or try something there and see what works. And that's the other great thing about being in the family business. Most of the time, no one's ever going to say like, hey, you idiot, like that was a terrible decision. They're going to say like, hey, you
Right.
tried it. It didn't work. Let's try something else.
Yeah.
And that's really what kind of makes it fun, is as we're out here, so we have about 20 other people, non-family members on payroll here to help run the ranch. And
Yeah.
there's so many decisions that we have to make sure are, I don't want to say are right, but hopefully they're right. Not only is our livelihood determined by those decisions,
Dependent.
that there's 20 other families that those decisions affect as well. And
Yeah.
if, we might say, oh, well, this week we might need to make sandwiches and stay home for lunch instead of going to Houston and eating at Papados because we didn't have a great, sales season like we thought we would.
Yeah.
We don't want those other people that come here and show up every single day to have those conversations.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
something that always, yes, it's a family business, but it's, not only our family that I guess you say owns the ranch, but so many
Right.
other families have something to do with this ranch, and this ranch supports them. We always have to think about when we're doing things, because it's not just us or the core family members that, have to sign the checks on Friday when it's payroll day.
When my dad says dance with the one who brought you, what that refers to is the way that our cattle look. There's a specific kind of blueprint for how V8 cattle should look. And that's
Right.
that has been honed generation after generation. And so it would be based on what originally the founder of the ranch, Howard Parker, who lost his eyesight, and then my grandfather and my father, and now us. Um, I think it's so, I love it. Sometimes within our own home, we'll be talking about things we want to do in the business and things that we think should be done. Um, and then I will share those ideas with my parents, and my dad will push back a little. And I'm thankful for that pushback. And I'm grateful for the wisdom that the older generation allows for us, not at the time, but sometimes. And Luke will attest to this. Sometimes I'll say, that balance that exists of, let's say, I want to put my foot on the gas and push it.
Yeah.
And my dad saying, like, let's tap the brakes, or my mom saying, let's tap the brakes. Even if it's a little unwelcomed at that moment,
Yeah.
a little time to sit with it. I think that balance right now is going to keep us both moving forward and innovating and improving, but also staying true to what generations have built here. And so
Yeah.
when it's my turn to be the one tapping the brakes with my son, with our son, I hope that we have a similar relationship where he shares his one of the people that we've always followed says big, hairy, audacious goals. He shares his big, hairy, audacious goals with us.
Yeah.
And I hope that we say, like, we're going to help you chase your dreams for this business. But I hope we're also brave enough to share maybe some of the wisdom that that could help it as well. And I hope he's receptive to that. And I know that I can continue to try to work on being a little more receptive. But
First, folks.
I just think that if I step back from it a little bit, we're very lucky to work alongside people who are willing to share the wisdom that they have.
In this interview, we chat with Camille Johnson about the origins of the Haslam family's family office, which was founded in 2020, around the same time the family sold Pilot, the business that built their wealth. Camille walks us through how a young office has grown to serve 43 family members across 4 generations, and why she believes that the best governance structures are the ones you're willing to build imperfectly and adjust as you go. Camille, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hello, thank you.
So let's start with a little bit of the origin story here. When was the family office founded? And if you kind of know the answer to this question, why was the family office founded? What was the goal?
I love it. The origin story. So I do know the answer.
Okay.
Shockingly. Sometimes it's, you're not always sure, because I wasn't here when it was founded.
Right.
So Family Office was founded in 2020, which obviously is a unique time to be starting literally anything, given what was going on in the world then. And so the family had started, the source of their wealth are the Pilot gas stations, if you've ever been through one of those. Jim Haslam, who still comes in the office every single day at 95. He is, you always hear of people and you wonder, like, are they as great as like you think that they are? And he's better. He's the best.
Yeah.
So it's a huge privilege to get to share an office space with him every day. And I hope that I hope I'm as sharp as him one day at 95.
Yeah.
And so, but he, is the founder of Pilot, started it from the ground up. Hearing him talk about it is the coolest thing ever, and just really inspiring. And so, that had obviously was when people talk about family offices and family businesses, that was, for the Haslams, that was Pilot. And so, when they began kind of the selling process of Pilot, that's, I think, a pretty natural time for a lot of families to start the, what's next conversation. And also, I think for a lot of families, the what's next is a family office.
Definitely.
And so that was founded for them 2020. Again, because of everything going on in the world. It started with, I think there was maybe like 3 actual employees at the time.
Yeah.
Working out of a very small office space. We're based here in Knoxville, Tennessee. So it's been really neat to be a part of something that has grown, and to be a part of something that's really being built. And a really cool thing to watch and see. But yeah, that's kind of how they got going.
That's awesome. Yeah, and like you said, I mean, that is definitely a natural sell sort of this main legacy business, and now you have more of a diversified portfolio. But yeah, a heck of a time to kind of try to bring the family together
Yeah,
when no one can
2020.
be
Why
together.
aren't more people doing things then? Crazy.
So how many family members does the office serve right now?
We have 43. And so I sometimes hear of families that have like 100 plus, and I am in awe of all that they can manage, because I'm like, ooh, I feel like we're 43 feels good.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have 4 generations. So obviously Mr. Haslam is our G1, and then down to G4. So we have, our ages range everywhere from 1 to 95.
Wow. Awesome. And how big is the staff? I should ask that too.
So we have a unique office. We have, I think, and now I'm like, we're hiring, and it's growing all the time, which is a great problem to have.
Yeah. Totally.
I think we're around like 20, 22, 23 staff members total. And we have, our main offices are here in Knoxville, and then we do also have a Charlotte, HF Charlotte branch as well.
Awesome.
But
Okay. And then for you personally, when did you come to join the family office? How did that happen? And then what does your role in the family office entail now?
yeah. So I started here at HF Capital in 2022, but have actually worked for the family just in a different capacity since 20, gosh, I don't know, a couple years before then.
Yeah.
And so I always say, I'm like, gosh, like, don't know how people work for family offices if you don't just like love the family. So I've been lucky to just have been with them for a while, and I'm like, they're just as great as you think.
Yeah.
So, but I again worked for them in a different capacity. I was living out west at the time. We always, if you're from the South, there's this like saying that's like you always kind of boomerang back at some point.
Right.
So I was kind of hitting the point where I was ready to boomerang back to the South.
Yeah.
And went to the family members that I was working for at the time and was like, I love this. I love working for y'all, but I also just miss being close to home and family. And then, the conversation came up of, well, what do you think about Knoxville? And I was like, I don't think about
Right.
it's never a city that was on my radar. And then they kind of mentioned that they had started this family office and that was something that was growing and being built. And then, of course, my first question was, what's a family office? I had no idea what I was getting into. But again, I just think, it was a family that I just have an enormous amount of respect for and trust them a lot. And so I think when you have those two components, at least in my opinion, was you can really do just about anything when you have those two pieces of an equation. And so it was a really easy yes to both Knoxville and this role, which my technical title is the Haslam family liaison. And so people hear that if you're in the family office world, you're kind of like, okay, you can kind of understand a little bit.
Figure it out.
If you're not, you're like, is that real? Is that fake?
Yeah.
You're just I'm like, I don't even know. And so my role has evolved and grown a lot over just the course of my time here. But now I think, to answer your question, the best way to describe what I do now, I always break it down into the 3 E's. So it's event, education, and engagement are kind of the main buckets that I try to hit on. And so, but again, when I first started, I didn't have that kind of language to put around it. It was just, again, you kind of recognize a need and try to fill it. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad to hear that you didn't know exactly what a family office was when you first started, because when I first started this job writing about family offices, I had no idea. And I've come to find, and you probably have too, that it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, right? So
yes,
everybody's kind of figuring out what it means for their family.
right.
And so, like, for you guys, you mentioned this, the family is not as big as like 150 member family, like some family offices, but still pretty sizable. So in your position, how do you create governance structures and communication practices for such a large family? They have a lot of different business interests and things like that going on. It's multi-generational. I don't know how spread out they are geographically, but just kind of, how do you create those governance structures and communication structures to keep them all kind of engaged?
That is
Easy question for
I
you.
was like, that is the $1 million question.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think, when I first started, I got really hung up on, I can be a little bit type A. And so in my mind, if somebody comes to you and is like, hey, we need an education program for our G4, which, for us, it's what we deem our rising gen. I know everybody kind of has a different way that they define that for their own family. But I was so hung up on having a perfect plan.
Yeah.
And so I, was talking to all these other people. The great thing about the family office world, again, I am not an expert in any of this, but have just really been fortunate to talk to a lot of great people and really wise people who have been around the block a few more times and have done this before. And so,
Yeah.
I think I thought that I would maybe find somebody or come across somebody that had the right program or had done this for a similar family and would give me like, this is exactly what you need to do, kind of a copy paste. Because
Yeah.
mine, I was like, there's no way that this hasn't been done before.
Right.
And true, it has been done before, but never for this family.
Yeah.
So I think that was the unique piece of realizing, like, gosh, there's gonna have to be some element of like, at some point, I'm just gonna have to start. And I was like, that's even when people ask me about it now, I'm like, just start. Like, even if it's with one thing, just start.
Yeah.
Because I was very fearful of getting it wrong or, wanting to please every single, how do you meet the expectations of a lot of different people? And the reality is A, you just won't. Um,
Right.
and then B, you'll never regret just starting because you'll learn, I've learned a lot from things that have worked and things that haven't worked. So,
Yeah.
um, would definitely just say at some point you just start. And a great piece of advice I got when I was kind of figuring that out and getting to talk to people who are much smarter than I am. We always, there's like the saying that, if you're ever the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I was like, I'll never be in the wrong room. Uh, and so they were like, you're not ever, it's like any family. Like you think about your own family. And I'm like, I have two brothers and cousins. And, it's like trying to think about us getting to agree on
Yeah.
everything. Impossible.
Yeah.
Impossible. And we're all like,
Totally.
on great,
Yeah.
but we also have had very different life experiences too. So
Yeah.
somebody told me kind of as we were navigating this process, like, you're not going to get a family to agree on everything. And that's not a bad thing,
Right.
but they can align on a couple of things or one thing. And so kind of like to put your energy there versus worrying about, you want to make everyone happy and
Yeah.
I'm a recovering people pleaser. So of course you want that. Uh, and so that was really helpful advice. But, at the end of the day, I think it was helpful for me to kind of work backwards, thinking about G4 and how to set them up well for success. And just realizing that the structures are going to look a little bit different for each generation, and that's okay. And I think that's a good thing. But yeah, just to be okay to try something and be humble enough to realize if it worked or didn't work. 'Cause,
Yeah.
again, you'll learn, and a lot of the family they're really gracious and kind, and they also, it's their first time doing it too. So it's not like they have we're all learning together. So I think that's been really helpful. But
Yeah, definitely. Well, like you said, the number one thing is like if you're gonna try things, you have to have that humility to know, okay, this isn't working. Learn from it and move on. Which that's the key, right?
right. Yeah.
It's different for every family, I guess is the point. And you just never know how it's gonna come together for that specific family.
Yeah. And so I think when we first started, our governance structure looked a lot different than it does now. And that's,
Yeah.
again, not a bad thing, but we also realize, some family members are in a position where they can and want to engage a lot more. And other family members are like, hey, I have 3 kids under the age of 11. And
Yeah.
I'm like just trying to like keep my head above water. And
Yeah.
so just recognizing that, there's always space for them to be involved in whatever capacity they want to be. And it's okay if that time is not right now.
Yes.
That can always
Yes.
be later too. But we just recognize that everybody's in a different life stage and capacity. And also just kind of what we're trying to incorporate with what we do with their RG4 is, everybody has different strengths too. Not everybody's going to want to be engaged on the investment committee. They might be like struggling to stay awake for something like that. Whereas
I know I would be. Yeah.
right. I'm like,
Yeah.
you can ask me any money questions. But then, we have other family members that are so like that is just how their brain works, and they love being a part of those conversations, and we want them to be a part of those conversations. And so you never want somebody to feel like forced to be there. So I heard recently, it's like you kind of give them like a menu of opportunities to be engaged.
Yeah.
And maybe somebody's more events minded and wants, they want to help facilitate those sort of meetings and conversations to create something really wonderful and beautiful. And then other family members that, their strengths are just going to be utilized in a different way, or maybe not at all right now. And maybe that's not right now, but in a couple of years when their kids are, in college and out of the house. So